guys, welcome back to another exciting episode on the show, Control or Be Controlled. The podcast designed to help you start thinking differently and take control of your life. And I remain your host, Darlington. Today's guest is Paul Aaron Travis. Paul has spent his career exploring one of the most important and often least understood parts of being human: connection. He is the founder of schoolforlove.com and schoolforlovers.com, and the only person known to be certified as a sexologist, sexuality educator, and management consultant. His work explores people build deeper. His work helps people build deeper, more authentic relationships by combining psychology, communication, emotional intelligence, and healthy sexuality. Paul is also the author of The Spark You Have Been Missing, where he introduces the Auth Intimacy Framework, a practical approach to moving beyond disconnection and creating relationships built on trust, vulnerability, and genuine intimacy. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me and for being one of the few podcast hosts who pronounced Auth Intimacy correctly. Good job.
Okay, thank you so much. So I hope you enjoyed that introduction.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and really, I'm here to bring value to your listeners in all the research that I did for The Spark You've Been Missing, Unmask Disconnection, and Deepen Relationships using the Auth Intimacy Framework. So we can dive into sexuality or intimacy. I think of intimacy as emotional intimacy, but of course there's also sexual intimacy. I always like to make it clear, those are not one and the same.
All right, Paul, thank you so much. So I have some questions here for you, and I would like us to...
Yes, please.
Okay, so you often talk about authentic intimacy. What does that actually mean, and why do so many people struggle to experience it?
Well, the first part is that this hybrid notion of auth intimacy is not exactly authentic intimacy. It's the combination of authenticity and intimacy. I describe it as a heartbeat, as a pulsing of energy outward and inward. Outward is our authenticity, how much we feel comfortable showing the world who we really are. I think there's a lot of people who live kind of within this set of walls that's really a bunch of masks. And then on the in-breath, intimacy is, a very long time ago, I heard the pronunciation of into me see, the idea that intimacy is really about how much I am able to let somebody else into my world, to actually see my vulnerability and see my delicate, little quirky humanity. So in answering your question, I would say that there are so many people who grew up feeling judged. And of course, we also judge others. And so that just keeps going around. And I think that people then have a hard time letting others in because of our insecurities. And so this book really dug into the three aspects of that. One is shallowness. We don't go deep. It's not safe. Two is disconnection. We've gotten less time, our FaceTime with not FaceTime, the Apple product, but time with our friends has diminished dramatically. There's research that shows that across all age categories, we're not spending time with our friends, and that shows in the amount of screen time that we have. And then the third epidemic that I call out is loneliness, and how many people had friends from when they grew up, how many people had friends from when they were in school, from different jobs, and then over time, those friendships fade away. We go through, we might relocate to a different geography, and our friends are no longer able to hang out with us, and so we over time, other people get married and they go off and they're no longer available, or they get divorced and those friends kind of dry up. And so there is just this compounding effect that people are experiencing. And I present in the book a whole bunch of exercises to get back into real connectedness.
Okay, Paul, thank you so much for that wonderful answer. So, you founded the School for Love during the pandemic, right?
Yep.
So, tell us what did that period, because that was a very crazy period for a lot of relationships. People had to stay at home together for a long time. So most people were so away from their lovers, and so tell us what that period revealed to you about the state of modern relationships.
Were you asking what happened to me, or were you asking what? I lost you just a little bit there.
Tell us what that period during the pandemic when you founded the School for Love. What did that period reveal to you about the state of modern relationships?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I was in COVID, I was dating, and I continued even when the mask mandate came in, and 6 feet apart, and I mean there were very different experiences with people who were single and people who were coupled. As you say, there were a lot of people who were not able to, they were geographically separated from their family or from their lovers. And then others who were cooped up and spent years with them, more time than they'd ever imagined. And so those were two different experiences. My experience was of dating, and I decided that because I had the flexibility to work from anywhere, I was able to date within a broader radius and a distance. And so I ended up falling in love with somebody who's a 5-hour drive away from me, which presents its own challenges. Long distance relationships have their own challenges. But the common aspect between all of these things, and actually I should continue on that path just a little bit, because you asked about founding the School for Love. I actually founded it under the umbrella or the domain name of pandemic.love, because I saw how many people were going through these very existential challenges that they'd never had before, they'd never felt before. And so, I started with singles, and then in running programs for singles who were struggling with, just not being able to meet people and feeling incredibly lonely and incredibly, had a lot of despair. When I was running these programs, I also found men in particular were having challenges with midlife transitions, and either the ending, the death of a relationship, or the ending of a career or a business, or also the ending of the death of a parent. And so that was another support group that came about because of the need that I saw with people's hearts, and how really upset and non-resourced people were just not feeling a lot of places to go. And frankly, that continues. We have not, society is still in a bunch of turmoil, as you probably know.
Oh, thank you so much, Paul. Of course, society is in a lot of turmoil. So, Forbes reported that 90% of Americans feel their sex education didn't prepare them for real world relationships. First of all, Paul, I would like to ask you, do you agree with that?
Do I agree with that? Absolutely. I
Okay.
meet people so often who express challenges with, how can I talk to a partner about sex? How can I actually get, am I normal? Where should I go for, feeling like I'm not orgasming the way that others do, or that I hear other people experience, or I see in the movies. And, I regularly am telling people there is no normal. Whatever is normal for you is your normal. And regardless of whatever situation you're in, there are resources out there. And so the School for Lovers, School for Love is more about relationship, and School for Lovers is about pleasure and sensuality. And so there are always resources that people can make changes. There's no permanent sentence.
Okay, so Paul, you work with people over 40 and reference Carl Jung's idea that this is our magnum opus stage of life. Why do relationships often change so dramatically after midlife?
Well, there's a lot of people, let's kind of say that most people as I said, there is no normal, but there is a bell curve. And so there are more people in the center of the bell curve who go through some sort of a major relationship. They are taught growing up that they should go to school and they should get a good job and they should get married and have a family. And those are the stories that surround our society. Nobody ever talks about the fact that half of marriages end in divorce, that half of relationships experience infidelity, that second marriages actually have a higher divorce rate, 60%, than first marriages of 50%. So there's a lot of storybook that people are raised into, and everybody kind of wants to be normal and they want to do what society tells them. Very few people grow up as kind of wanting to draw outside the lines. It's taught that it's not a safe place. That's the societal principle of humanity. So I think that there's a lot of people who go through the end of a marriage, and they no longer have children at home, and they're asking, well, what else is there to life? Do I just want to keep doing the same thing? And they decide, I'm actually going to make some different choices. There's a notion of there being 3 marriages. One is kind of the honeymoon stage. Then there's generally a time with either, whether somebody has children or they have pets, or they rent an apartment or buy a house with a partner. And there's that chapter. And then there's kind of an empty nest chapter. And so I think a lot of people start to reevaluate what's important in their life and what are things that they may never have experienced that are calling to them, and that their soul keeps knocking on the door and saying, but what about me? But what about experiencing all of life and not just staying in this box? So that, I think, is underlying your question about why do people feel that there's something else that they start to go looking for. And I think that the answer is resources. School for Love and School for Lovers, they're about giving people new options, whether they're in, whether they've let go of a relationship and they want to create something anew that's not just the same old pattern, or whether they're in a marriage or a long-term relationship that they want to change. There's so much research that we live in a state of running, 95% of our actions are our subconscious. We might say, I want to be thinner, but then our subconscious keeps running programs that say, let me keep eating the same way and let me keep moving my body the same way. And so there's a lot of our life that is just keeps going on repeat. There's a movie, Groundhog Day, where the character Bill Murray played just kept having the same experiences over and over and over. And I think that a lot of people in the singles realm experience that with a Groundhog Date, and they just keep having the same thing. And so the resources that School for Love and School for Lovers and other places provide can help people to find, I'm not saying that the resources and the teachings that I've got on School for Love and School for Lovers, not only mine, but others, I'm not saying they're right for everybody, but there are resources. If one of your listeners hears this and says, I want to find a resource, there is something out there for you, whether I can help or not.
All right, Paul, thank you so much. I'm sure the resources that you have can be of great help to my audience because this topic is a very critical topic. Most people try to shy away from it, but I think it's better for us to come out and discuss this. So, tell us the difference between physical intimacy and emotional intimacy. Why do so many couples have one without the other?
Very good question. Very few people ask me that question, so I appreciate it. I will go back to the model that I mentioned of Auth Intimacy. If we were on video, you could see a book I'm holding up, but your listeners could go to schoolforlove.com, and there's an Auth Intimacy quiz that they can take, and that actually shows the model of Auth Intimacy. And so people can take a look at that. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because I'm a visual learner. If I can see a diagram, then it helps me to kind of imprint it in my brain. And so if there are others like that or who've just heard me describe it, emotional intimacy and really feeling a sense of trust that I'm okay letting somebody else into my world, that is completely different from sexual intimacy. I have had many friends with whom I share emotional intimacy. I feel good about my life. I feel I'm presenting myself authentically and on the intimacy scale. That's what the Auth Intimacy quiz does, is it helps people realize where they are on the intimacy spectrum, letting somebody else see into me, and then the authenticity scale. Coming back to the point was that there's many friends who I share my vulnerabilities with and who I let give me input and ask questions about, what is something that I'm thinking about doing based on what I just said. That sense of truly being seen by another, letting somebody see my weaknesses and my flaws and still loving me, that is an incredible gift. And I think that is the kind of connection that I talk about, that I mean when I talk about the spark that you've been missing. When there is caring from another person, completely separate of sexual intimacy, that is a very special sense of belonging. Even if it's with somebody in an elevator ride, just for 2 minutes, but a sense of connection and seeing into one another. When I bridge that, or when I build that atop, or when I build sexual intimacy atop in emotional intimacy, for me, that is the most special experience. Yes, I have had sexual intimacy without feeling emotional intimacy. Many people have had this experience, and sometimes it's a great sense of pleasure, but maybe not as fulfilling in terms of whether it's going to create a relationship or whether it really feels meaningful. And so I think that both sexual intimacy and emotional intimacy are important. Many people are rewriting trauma stories from their sexual upbringing, or from their sexual trauma experiences from their upbringing. And so I think that, if somebody just wants to have pleasure and sexual experience, and it's done in a way where it's communicated with somebody else, I'm not looking for a relationship, or I'm not looking for this to continue, but I just want to experience pleasure. Adults can have genuine conversations like that. For me, I really seek the experience of combining emotional intimacy and sexual intimacy. Does this translate for you? What does that spark in you?
So I think our physical intimacy has to do with physical presence. Most times when you are in the same space with someone, you begin to feel a kind of intimate feeling with them. Maybe you spend some time together for a long time, but that might not translate into emotional intimacy. So let's talk about the spark you have been missing. What is the inspiration behind that book, and what do you hope readers will take away from it?
Well, I mentioned a little bit of this earlier, that it felt really important to me to bring all of this together in the book after dealing with hundreds of people in the School for Love program and talking with countless others at events and even in conversations about doing programs at the School for Love, that people are wanting more. They're, I talked about the bell curve. There is no normal. No one person has the same experience as another. But in general, I felt this sense of disconnection hurting people and diminishing their experience of the fullness of life. I have always felt like shallow conversations. Hi, how are you? And somebody says, fine. And that's all that it never goes any deeper. Always just feels very small talkish, superficial, and really burying or masking what's really going on in somebody's experience. And then, of course, many of your listeners will have heard about this epidemic of loneliness that even the U.S. Surgeon General is saying is equally dangerous as cigarette smoking. So when I brought all of those together and addressed how each of them is mitigated or salved by the Auth Intimacy Framework, it just felt really good. And the feedback that I've gotten is so validating that people are looking for this. And so, out of doing this work to write the book and getting feedback from people, I'm also creating something called Auth Intimacy Live, where people will be able to practice. They're actually able to get on Zoom and do some of these exercises with others who are learning this same technique, because sometimes it's hard to do it in one's real life, and it's easier if we can do some practice first. So I feel like the online programs have been, the building blocks that I've built the School for Love around, and I keep getting feedback that is helpful for people.
Okay, thank you so much, Paul. Honestly, I would love to have my hands on your book, because there's definitely some sparks that I have been missing in my life.
Well, thank you. I'll just mention, I didn't say before, but readers can find it on Amazon.com, and that's the ebook. And then I'm also working on an audiobook version of it, because I know how many people like me, make less time to read things in paper and listen on audio. So that'll be available at schoolforlove.com real soon.
Okay, so Paul, I have more like a personal question, and I'm sure people feel this way, but they find it difficult to say it. Paul, why is it that there are some sexual intimacy, or there's some sex that we have and it makes us feel guilty, and there are some that we have that we don't feel guilty?
Are you talking about sex with somebody else, or are you talking about solo sex, like masturbating?
Both. Solo sex, we feel guilty. Masturbating. There's some sex we have with in the other people, not same sex though. Just intimate with a girl and we feel guilty. Then with a different girl we don't feel guilty.
I would say that guilt and shame are just a horrible layer of emotional baggage that none of us really needs. And so I think that somebody going to a counselor or working with a professional like a sex educator to get underneath what the guilt is about. If we come back to the bell curve and think about very kind of common themes about what people are guilty about, I think a huge one is what we were told by our parents about sex when we were growing up. Parents often, at least in my culture, would avoid the topic of sex and would kind of hush hush, like that's not something that's adult conversation. We don't talk about it with kids. So kids have this big mystery cloud around sex. What is it all about? And nobody talks to them in many of the schools. Sex is mentioned as a physical experience, but nobody really talks about how it's an emotional and, often can be a spiritual experience. So there are a lot of messages that we have running around in the back of our mind about like what we're doing isn't right, or some religions even teach that it's bad to have sex. And so people carry that on. So my heart goes out when I hear about people feeling guilty having sex, because of course guilt is supposed to be something that stops us from doing something, and yet sex is a human need. And so, then we continue to have sex and we continue to feel guilty. So that's just a real Rubik's Cube that's unsolvable without taking into account some sort of intentional change. And so, it might be that somebody says, look, I'm not going to have sex for a while, and I want to get underneath the hood of the car, so to speak, the bonnet of the car, some people say, in terms of understanding what's really behind, what's underneath this guilt that I'm feeling. We talked about solo sex, and masturbation is even more chided by parents and by society, that masturbation is often seen as something that is, only for people who can't have a real relationship, which is completely not true. And it's really a shame that people, or it's a tragedy that people have this idea that they can't pleasure themselves, because frankly, if we can't pleasure ourselves, then we give all of our, you talk about, control or be controlled. We give all of our control in the realm of pleasure and sexuality to somebody else because we haven't figured out how to do it for ourselves. So in my work, I just continually help people to see that it is completely normal to know how to pleasure myself. It is completely normal for people to be able to communicate what they like and what they don't like to their partner, because otherwise, that shame and guilt is running around in the back of our minds, and we're doing something. It's almost like we step outside of our body and we watch ourselves do something with somebody else or by ourselves and have commentary on it, which is just again, goes back to the disconnection idea. So the more that if any of your listeners are experiencing this, I would say, take some time, come and look at School for Love resources, or find other resources that will help you to start to do things differently. Because as I mentioned before, 95% of our lives is run on our subconscious level. And so if we're not actively working to make change, things are going to be exactly the way they are. And you're worth more than that.
Okay, thank you so much, Paul. So I still have one more personal question. So is it? I don't think myself. I'll give my opinion. I'll let you talk about what you think as well. So I don't think when a woman in a relationship, maybe a marriage or a relationship, and she decides to have sex with, let's say, cheating now, sleeps with someone else. I know for men it's possible to sleep with a girl that you don't like, just the sex. Is it possible for a woman to do that? Especially a woman who was committed in the relationship.
Well, I want to make sure I understood the subtleties of what you're saying. You're saying that it's okay for a man to sleep with a woman.
No, I'm saying, I know a man, when a man cheats in a relationship, he doesn't cheat because he likes the other woman most of the times. I'm not saying 100% of the time. Most of the times, he cheats because of sex. To him, it's just sex. But to women, I don't think it's the same. I think they need to develop an emotional connection, especially when they are in a relationship. They need to develop an emotional connection with someone else before they can have sex with them. Am I right?
I wouldn't say that there again is just one way. However, I do agree with a number of the points that you're making. One, that well, actually, let me intervene with a data point, and that is that infidelity in a relationship, cheating, is not unique to men, and in fact, research has shown that women cheat equally or possibly slightly more than men. And I believe, going back to your point, that the needs of being emotionally met and sexually met are stronger within women who cheat than men. I think that it's easier for men to cheat just for physical reasons. But I think that women are prompted to look for other lovers or look for somebody outside their relationship because their emotional needs are not being met. Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This has been a very, very exciting episode so far. Thank you for sharing with us your knowledge and your insight and perspective on sexual intimacy and the importance of authentic human connection. In a world where it's easier than ever to communicate, but often harder than ever to truly connect, your work reminds us that healthy relationships begin with self awareness, honesty, and the courage to be seen. So, for those who would like to learn more about School for Love or schoolforlovers.com or your book, The Spark You Have Been Missing, how can they do that?
Well, I've mentioned, people can go to Amazon to get the book. They can go to schoolforlove.com, and the Auth Intimacy quiz is free and will give you insights into growth that you can do if you're looking for more authenticity, more connection, more of a spark. Whether you're in a relationship, whether you're not, whether you're gay, whether you're straight, whether you're pansexual, whether you're more masculine identified, more feminine identified, it is a tool that I've gotten such joy out of bringing to people and gotten great feedback from. So School for Lovers is another resource if somebody's feeling good about their relationships and they want to dig into pleasure and sensuality. I have a lot of resources that are not just mine, but other people who have created fantastic tools for relationships.
Okay, thank you so much. My audience as well, thank you guys so much, and make sure to have a wonderful day ahead. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much, Paul, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.